right, let's kick off with a podcast this week, which is the Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat podcast. The episode was called We-ness, the secret course of... I realise that sounds really strange when you say it out loud. The secret course of psychological safety. So I was listening to this over the weekend. It is the podcast with Bruce Daisley. And in this episode, he was chatting to Professor Katrien Franzen about her work around leadership and social identity. Now, the big thing for us to take away is the importance of we-ness, which is about coming together. So basically in the research, it says that when it comes to psychological safety, if we don't have the fact that people feel like a team, then that safe culture won't happen. So if you haven't got that we-ness, then psychological safety won't happen. So that's the bulk of the conversation. But they were also talking about different types of leadership styles and how leaders can't possibly be all of them, which I really wanted to talk about because, as you said just now, you do like to give leaders a hard time. So it was saying that you can have different leaders in the team regardless of formal hierarchy. And the research shows 4 different leadership roles: a task leader, so giving technical advice on the field; a motivational leader who's really good in motivating the team to do their best; a social leader, creating a good team atmosphere within the team; and an external leader who is responsible for representing the team towards those outdoor parties. Now, when we think about leaders, we often only think about that task leadership aspect, like what do they actually do, like giving advice to make the performance better. But what the research also shows is that having these other leadership behaviours is really important, which I would always advocate in terms of credible leadership. In the conversation, they say we expect the formal leader of the team, whether it's a coach, a captain or a manager in the team, to do all of these leadership behaviours. And that's actually not possible. So, Chuck, as you always demand a lot of leaders, what does this research tell us that when the research tells us that it's just not possible, do you feel that it's still fair to ask all of these things from leaders? And on the we-ness piece, what should internal comms be focusing on to support the creation of that we culture to enable psychological safety? So I've got 2 questions for this one.
Okay, so three things here. One, for those listening, if you're going to talk about we-ness, add a little pause between the we and the ness, because if you bridge that together a little too quickly, you're probably going to raise some eyebrows. We do demand a lot from leaders, and I think that's part of the job. And when I looked at those, I like looking at the 4 different leadership roles. I think that's an interesting way to look at it, where I see the social leader and the motivational leader are probably pretty close relationship to one another. Like when I think of leaders in the past who have been a good motivational leader, they're also a pretty good social leader, where they kind of create that camaraderie, that the togetherness, the we-ness perhaps between all of that. But then they also do have the knowledge of the job. And so I do expect leaders to have all of these things. At least the best leaders, I think, have all these things, but not in equal parts. You can't be at 100 on all of these. I do recognize that. But I think when I look at leaders, it would be, I think that motivational and social leader is probably the ones that work their way up, or I think have the best success with the baseline of the task. They know the job. They know the role. They know what's expected of people. It's that external leader, that's the one that everyone sees. Those are the people you see speaking at events and on posts and, interviewed in media, wherever it is. That's not always, I think, what's going to end up coming out in the wash at the end of the day, is that external part for everyone. But I think those first 3, I absolutely expect from leadership teams. And I think for the we-ness part, for the internal comms team to support that culture, I think that's just telling the right stories and celebrating the right elements of that. But please don't use we-ness in your articles, because I just feel like that's an HR call waiting to happen. But I think it's celebrating the leaders that are delivering that motivation, that do know the business, that show their knowledge, but also are building a great team around them. Like that's the easy stuff that's out there. Sometimes just finding it is the hard part.
I agree with all of that. I think there's also the piece about recognizing that all of these different leader roles can be within your team. So there might be someone who's a really good social person in your team who likes organizing the events and the social stuff and all of that. And that's not the leader, but there's someone that likes doing it. Like, let them do it, let them lead that, and let them do that, because I think that's really important. I think the we-ness piece for internal comms is really important when it comes to psychological safety, because psychological safety still is talked about a lot. Like, it's talked about with, I was talking to a client just this morning and we were talking about it. The fact that the root cause of that has to come from being able to operate as a team and feel like you're part of a team and feel like people care about you and value you. There are direct actions there for HR and comms around how you can actually make that happen, which I actually think takes the pressure off leaders to create the psychologically safe organisation. It's still absolutely there, but I think so much of the psychological safety stuff has been aimed at leaders, less aimed at HR and comms. And I think that culture of being together, that culture of a shared understanding, of feeling like you're doing meaningful work towards a purpose, I think has just a much more shared responsibility, it feels, to do that.
I think you bring up a really great point, which I had not thought of. So I want to give you credit for this, around looking at those leadership roles that exist within a broader team, not just the leader themselves, of looking around at your team, whether you're the leader or not, and say, who is our task leader? Who is our motivational leader? Who is our social leader? Who is our external leader? And that external leader is the one that I see as sometimes the slightly problematic, because if that's not the leader, it always seems like they're the ones working around or getting out, or why are they speaking for the team? They're not even the one representing that's a little bit of the tricky one. If that's not the leader, is there some security, and there's a psychological safety in that person feels like they can go and do those things? But I think that is a good call out to look at this from an overall team level, to say who is leading us in these various aspects.
Yeah, and whilst I'd love to take credit, it was talked about in the podcast, so I can't take full credit for that. But it is, you're right about that external piece, because there's an ego piece that would happen there in the team, and I think that might show up differently in different cultures around the world in terms of that external speaker. But there's certainly something in there about how would that impact the team dynamic if it was not the leader hierarchically that was doing that.